Hey, good people of the earth. Well, today we are going to continue on with our gesture drawing and continuing on with the movement and understanding the proper use of defining the line, gesturing the line, carving the line, and all those things we did in the last demonstration. But today we're going to be beginning to trying to mimic an object or a still life. So what I've done, and hopefully you can do too at home, is to get a can, a simple pop can will do. I think that we all should try to do the same thing first, just so you can see how I would approach trying to draw this simple form. But a pop can, and I just spray painted it white. You can do anything to try to make that surface white. You can use masking tape to cover it. You can use any type of house paint, or if you just have like a sheet of paper with that you can just make into a cylinder form, that would work too. So just basically a simple cylinder is all we're going to need today, but a pop can works just as well. Today we're just going to ignore a lot of the detail on the still life. Today we're going not to do any of the cap or any of these kind of lines, so we can do that later on, but today we're just going to try to just mimic the shape. And I got some other objects that we're going to be doing as well, but we're just going to start off with the simple cylinder form or the pop can. So I'm going to place that over there onto the still life area. Hopefully you can get a table or a piece of furniture that you can distance yourself from the still life. I'm about 2 to 3 feet away, about 3 feet away. So try to be at least 3 feet away from your still life, and try for it to be not too high or too low. Make sure your still life is always somewhat between kind of waist height, so you're kind of looking down at it at a 45-degree angle. That's probably the best positioning from your eye to the still life. Here's just a quick close-up of the still life that we'll be using. It's just a pop can. Again, any type of cylinder that you have would work. So when we start, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be gesturing the form, and what I want you to do is to kind of try to follow the green laser here, if you can see that, and just how I'm going to kind of be gesturing and showing you how I approach the form. Remember, we're going to be holding on to our medium properly, okay, with that good 1/4 inch amount at the tip. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and start. Now remember, just because we are now trying to draw an object and trying to mimic something in the still life doesn't mean that we slow down or switch to our conventional way of drawing or writing. Okay, remember, try to keep that movement and that wrist flowing. Now what I want you to do is I want you to try to get about maybe 5 to 6 sheets of paper stacked and ready to go. Remember, if you're using your sketchbook, rip out 5 to 6 sheets from your sketchbook and draw on a nice good hard surface of some sort. Okay, so here I go. Also, remember to draw your still life always pretty large. We're going to start off trying to get the scale and the shape pretty large, because if we try to go small when you're beginning to learn how to still life, that makes it more challenging. So remember, we did all those projects where we dominated the paper. We did a lot of large abstract type drawings. Let's not close in. Let's keep that scale. Let's use the full sheet of the paper. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with just a simple kind of top area here where I have that oval form, and we practiced that oval form last time, so I'm going to try to do that again. So here I go, gesturing that top oval form, real simple. Remember to always put enough material on there so we can then carve that and find that perfect line. Okay, and since this is a geometric shape, the cylinder, we want some good symmetry, right? Symmetry being even on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and gesture kind of a guideline in the center, right? So I can go ahead and make sure that I have some good symmetry from one side to the next. I'm going to go ahead, right, and make sure that I'm always looking at my still life as I'm proceeding. You should always look at your still life just as much as you look at your drawing. Okay, no matter how simple that form is, always keep your eye on the still life. Okay, that's what's important. Okay, now I'm going to go down here and gesture that bottom as well. I'm paying attention to kind of the scaling here. Okay, obviously I know that I don't want it too long or too short of a can or a cylinder. So remember, kind of guide that, and always step back from your drawing. It's always going to be good to take 2 or 3 steps back, and that's going to help you with looking at it from a distance, right? And then you can really see the scale and make sure things are going correctly. When you're close at it at all times, okay, the angle of your eye to your paper, can alter the proportions, and proportions are important, right? Proportions are proper scale and measurement. Now you see how I'm kind of just quickly gesturing that out, loosely, right? Mapping out the still life in front of me, okay? Not worrying about any of the detail, okay? Not worrying about any of the surfacing, okay? If you have a can, if you can't paint the can, or if you have no way of covering it, just ignore any of the surface, ignore any of the labeling, okay? Just simplify it to a geometric shape. Okay, so step 1, I've gestured, okay, fairly simply and fairly quickly. Step 2, just like the last process we did, the last demo, I'm going to be carving and erasing. Because remember, that perfect shape is in there somewhere. Okay, now I'm just getting rid of a lot of the stuff that I don't need, right? Okay, don't need that center line in there anymore because it's it's going to be there anyways. Okay, and I'm also just getting rid of a lot of the larger mass and slowly trying my best to find that proper shape. Again, I'm looking at my still life. You guys can probably see my my head, of course, because I'm out of frame, but I am looking. I'm making sure, right, that I'm paying attention. Okay. After you've done some editing, okay, remember step 1, gesture the form. Step 2, okay, edit, carve, try to find some of that proper edge. And then I'm going to go back to my medium and try to do a more focused, defined edge now. Okay, so again, still moving fairly swiftly. Not trying to focus in too much on perfection. I still am going to carve and remove to find that edge, but remember, going a little bit more focused. Okay, so I'm going to be going on this edge. Okay, now I have another, since that shape here has that corner here, kind of ridge. Begin to gesture that out. Now when you draw your straight lines down, remember, make sure your posture is correct. Right? And give you plenty of material so you can carve away later. Right? Now I'm coming down here to the corner area. Right? Want that nice curve movement down, maybe a little bit more. See, if I feel that I've made a mistake, I'll add. Remember how forgivable charcoal is. Down here. Okay, switching back to my kneaded eraser. I'm going to begin to do some more carving down here at the bottom. Real simple shape. Again, remember how much of the paper I'm using, how large my still life is. That's why hopefully everybody has their materials now here. Sometimes that extra space just allows more of that investigation of that shape. Okay, now I'm going to step back, right? And as I step back, I can see that I might be just a little bit short here, right? So I'm going to correct that, but I'm not worried about it right now. If you see it, being a little long or a little wide, don't worry, you can fix it. Keep going, keep the flow. Okay, I want to extend that down just a bit. There we go. Again, use that gesture form. Use that gesture movement. There we go. Switch back to my kneaded eraser and remove and carve. Don't forget to always stretch out your gum eraser. The more you stretch it out, the more you can clean it off. There we go. That looks like a little bit better of a shape. Okay, the length looks fairly similar. Okay, still got some work to do on the edges and around the top, but looking so far so good. Okay, but remember, more so that I'm allowing the gesture to apply the material so that I can find that proper edge. Very important. Remember, we're trying to create a drawing that is a record of a moment in time of you observing this object in front of you. So we're not trying to make a photograph here. We're trying to, again, make a record of time in an archival medium. Okay. Now, as you can see, I'm going thinner and thinner like we were practicing last time. See, I can keep going thinner and thinner, keep shaping and creating a wedge form with my gum eraser, my kneaded eraser. And remember, the whole point is to learn how to do a linear drawing. And this is what you would call this drawing of this shape, this cylinder or this can is a linear drawing of this can, a line drawing. Okay. Now I'm making sure that when I'm wanting to do like a cylinder or any type of geometric shape with curves and forms, whether it's a mechanical object, a coffee a maker, or even a large machine, a science fiction kind of scene with a lot of machinery, you're going to need to learn how to do geometric shape. Okay, so one thing to consider is when you are doing your cylinder, you see these kind of corners of the oval. Make sure those are round. If they ever get like an eyelet, if it looks like an eye, meaning when it has two sharp corners, you want to make sure that you round those edges out. Okay, that these are rounded as you get that full graceful curve of that oval shape. Now down here, I need to sharpen this bottom corner up because it looks a little soft. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and sharpen that up just a bit. There we go. Or just add more material so I can carve it and find that edge again. Okay, getting my eraser out. See if I can find that proper corner. Again, remember, I am looking at my still life. I'm making sure. Even though, in my mind, I've seen a can before, and in my mind, I know exactly what a can looks like. But when you're trying to mimic a can or draw a specific object, it's almost like getting to know those objects all over again. Because you're discovering new things about shape or these objects or the world around you. The artist is constantly finding something new with their surroundings, with their environment. Okay, so you see how I'm beginning to get the shape correct. I still got work to do up here in this area. And you can see I'm adding a little bit more detail to some of these more curved forms. And, just drawing this here can, I'm thinking about the engineering of this object, the specific pressing that it takes with the machinery and the dies for this type of industrial form. And that in itself is content. That in itself has a lot of meaning, a lot of weight to it. Right? Meaning that even though we interact with objects like this every day, whenever you pay attention to them to a certain extent, such as like what we're doing, mimicking them, drawing them, well, we tend to be enlightened by them a little bit. Just to think of the engineering on how an object like this is made, and of course what it's done for or to society. Good example of this in the context of art and cultural influence would be Andy Warhol with the famous Campbell soup cans that were done, and basically charged the pop culture or the pop art movement of the 1960s. It brought to the mainstream consciousness of society. The engineering of culture, creating this phenomenon of popular culture being symbolized by the objects of consumption. And that object of consumption that Warhol was doing, or was drawing, the Campbell soup can and other, was a metaphor towards the industrialization of the human in that culture as well. Here we go. Okay, well here is a zoom in on the still life. Again, we're just doing a cylinder. If you don't have a pop can, or if you can paint one, or whatever the case, remember, any type of cylinder would work. And of course, all else fails, a simplified cylinder of a sheet of paper taped together. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back onto the demonstration, give you guys a detailed look as I continue to carve away to find that proper edge. And you can see how, there is a lot of erasing and, of course, construction. And remember, that's okay. That's what we want. We want that drawing to vibrate. We want that drawing to be an investigation of an object and, a moment of time. So all of that is going to give you the layering, right? And that layering will give you that complexity. Now, once I've completed the first phase of the linear drawing, remember to gesture, carve, define the line, and then define the edge. I'm going to go ahead and always remember to do my ground. Now, your ground in a still life is going to be whatever the still life is going to be sitting on top of, whether that's going to be the tabletop, or in this case, this spinning platform here. But the ground will always provide an anchor to a surface of some sort. We don't really want our still life to be floating in midair. So always ground your still life with whatever object or surface that you have. You can always just draw a straight line to just provide some sort of anchoring at the bottom. So always draw your ground. So if from my perspective, I have the back of my round platform here, and I'm looking at what point does that laser or that edge of that surface, my ground, at what point does it cross the can from my perspective. Later on we'll be doing what's called relationship lines, and we'll be doing a lot of comparisons on how to get proper proportion from looking and observing at where certain edges cross into the other object. So I'm looking at around halfway point is where that back line of that round surface crosses into the can. So it's about right here. And you can always remember, it's charcoal, go ahead and draw it all the way through. We'll get rid of that. That's going to provide you a better, rounder edge, more proper to the still life. Again, I'm going to erase away what I don't want or don't need. Again, don't worry about if you can still see that line. Okay. Darken these edges up. See, that's already provided some sort of anchoring, or what we call an environment. I mean, once I have that curved line there, that's telling me something. That's telling me that it's a round table. And that already is providing imagery in my head to where could this still life be. Again, okay, now from my perspective and from the scale, I don't have probably the room to do this edge right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is. That's enough information for me to let the viewer know that there is a surface that it's sitting on just from that simple background. We're going to go into the ghost lining. So now what we're going to need is your charcoal pencil. Okay, remember that it is should be sharp at the end, or at least somewhat chiseled. Hold on to it properly. All right, and I'm still looking at the still life. I'm still making sure that I'm, observing what I'm looking at. Even though it's a ghost line, even though I have most of it mapped out, I'm still going to be looking. Breathe. Remember the trick that we talked about looking at the edge, okay, or beyond the mark. If you look at where my finger is, the hand will follow that eye. Take some practice, but you'll get there. Nice light line, okay, down here as well. Oops. Little anchoring. Okay, up here, this corner. Okay. And what I just did was I stepped back. I made sure that I gave myself a good couple steps back to make sure that my proportions are looking correct, or my scale and my measurements. Remember, the only way you can really see that is if you step back. There you go. Okay. If you need to do 2 or 3 to get that proper, do 2 or 3. Doesn't matter. Charcoal is forgivable. Okay. Now I have some, this line here that's more of a tone, more of an edge created by shadow, but I still want to go ahead and draw that because we're simplifying. And we'll be doing this for most still lifes, so artists do this for most objects. When you're drawing a scene of of a landscape or of a cityscape with things happening, cars passing by, somebody selling some fruit on the side of the road. There's so many different types of shapes that are based off of geometry. So mostly, and most of the time, the artist will simplify everything to geometric shapes. And that helps with getting the accurate proportions and scaling of the fire hydrant in comparison to the woman standing next to it, in comparison to the stop sign next to it. The geometry and breaking things down into a geometric simplified form, allows for that measurement to be easier to achieve. and then the detail and the surfacing and the texture and what makes that object fur or wood or whatever, all that's after the linear drawing process. All right, so I've ghost lined it. Okay, I have some areas here where I was a little shaky, but you know, it's okay. I can go back over it, okay, and try to get that as accurate as possible. You know, you take your time. There's no rush here. Okay. Just attempt to do the best that you can. Okay, now after I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and dust it completely with my kneaded eraser. Don't forget to ghost line the ground as well. And if you didn't hear me, it is called ground. The ground. Just like the ground that you're stepping on. Now I'm just, you know, trying to put some finishing touches, you know, looking at my still life, see if there's any more detail, and, you know, by all means, add more detail. Some of you might have more drawing experience than others, so, you know, get as detailed as you want, just as long as you are staying within the linear drawing process. Let's not do tones or shadows or anything like that just yet. Okay, I'm going to correct this part right here. I feel like I'm a little off on this side, so I'm going to ghost line this side. There we go. That looks a little better. Get rid of that mistake. Okay. And even though, you know, I can still see that mistake, the whole point is that eventually with a linear drawing like this, we'll be going into tones and shadows to pull it out into space. Or into the 3-dimension, or the illusion of the 3-dimension. Okay? Okay, well here is the final step, I guess, is to sign your name right here at the bottom right corner. It's always a good place. You never want your signature to be, you know, a part of the drawing. You know, you always want it to be a separate thing. So don't get too creative with it. And always date it with, you know, 20. It's always good to keep these drawings because, like I said, it shows us in the future, you know, a reflection, right, of where you were in the past. But you can see that I have a linear drawing here. You know, there's some issues that I had with maybe, you know, maybe not getting things perfectly curved. I got a little rip down here when I was really trying to get that line. So sometimes that happens, you know, it's newsprint. Don't worry about it. You know, it's an object. You know, keep going. Don't start all over again. And, you know, I really encourage that or urge that to not start all over again. Live with that drawing, work through it, keep the mistakes. You see how I have, a pretty big mistake here, or it's not a mistake. It's just a part of the process. It's what happened at that moment. Keep it there, live with it. And as you can see, it creates something interesting. It creates a narrative of a journey of investigating this shape. And then it also creates some sort of transparency a little bit and some vibration. It's not just a can or a simple cylinder. It has a little bit more going. What could this be? There's no label on it. A vessel of some sort, an urn containing some sacred ashes in there of some sort. Some interesting movement of an insect floating around the bottom of a glass jar. A firefly wiggling around, and a child observing the amazement of nature, capturing it in a glass vessel. I like to think about things like that when I look at a drawing, or things like this when I look at a drawing. So we'll zoom in a little bit to give you some detail. Variety of line. It's important, see how I have, some various, imperfections of that line. Don't worry about it. It's a nice trail. When you walk down the trail, those trails aren't straight. Those paths have, various textures to them. Let me try to get back out a little bit. There you go. So, make sure you practice your cylinder, your coffee can, your pop can, your soda bottle, or just any type of cylinder. Maybe there's an interesting, found object that's cylindrical that you can find outside, or something, a cool old 5-gallon bucket. But do the best you can, and thank you.